everybody. Welcome to the 70th episode of Everyday Eternal. With me today is my wonderful co-host, Julian.
Hello, hello, hello.
And Eric.
Hi, everybody.
Mr. Grizzlebrand, what's up? How are you guys doing?
Great, great. It's the middle of the night, but I'm feeling ecstatic. I just finished another 4-1 league with Maverick, and I just told you guys, right, the deck is doomed to eternally 4-1, which I guess is a good place.
That's not bad. I've been getting a lot of 4-1s with depths as well, and my overall win rate is really high, so I'm pretty happy with it. Obviously, it feels nicer to get the 5-0, but not all of us can be Eric Landon. I just how many leagues do you play in a given week, Eric? What would you say?
I play a lot.
Fair enough.
I'd say I average five leagues a day.
Okay.
Here's a story. So we're in Bologna. It's Thursday night, and we go out for dinner and for some drinks, and then we come home at between 2 and 3 in the morning, and we're getting ready for the PTQ on Friday, and Eric is like, you know what? I should play another league. And so he sits down and 3 in the morning plays another league. And I guess that's... Actually, you caught up with Tom, right? You were 6-5-0s behind in Bologna, and now you're level?
Yeah, Tom smelled blood because I was at the GP and I wasn't playing very much. And he went on a crazy good heater, and yeah, he was up by I think 5. No,
hey, you still have a month before it ends, but I guess you don't want to be behind, so... That's funny. No, I respect that. I respect that you like Magic / I don't know, grinding leagues so much that you actually playing that much. I just sometimes I'm oh, I should be practicing right now. And I'm nah, I'm gonna watch TV or do something else. But I respect that you just have a singular focus.
Yeah, I've kind of always been that way. Whatever it is I just like that one thing, and I do it a lot.
Cool. Well, I think we have a couple topics today, but I think we definitely wanted to cover the GP, which I think some of us had some predictions for. So what ended up top 8ing was 3 Delver, 1 Oko midrange deck, 1 Miracles Oko deck that won the event, a Dredge, Sneak Show, and then a White Eldrazi deck that also had Once Upon a Time. So I basically predicted that exactly. Okay, I didn't predict Dredge, I predicted Depths instead. But I pretty much called it on the dot. Just going to throw that out there.
Yeah, I wrote it down, and you said 3 Delver, which was correct. You said 2 Oko midrange. I guess we got 1 Oko midrange and 1 Oko Miracles. I'm going to give you that. 1 Chalice deck, which we got, and 1 Sneak Show deck, which we got. And I think I also wasn't too far off, right? I predicted Delver. Well, it didn't end up being Grixis Delver, but still I got that. I was pretty sure that Dredge would top 8 because people really aren't respecting the deck very much, me included. And also Eldrazi in Texas. I initially said Eldrazi, but then I was okay, actually, I think the Eldrazi in Texas could be pretty good right now. And I guess Miracles is the cheap one that we all expected to get there, kind of. And Sneak Show, because it always gets there. And looking at what Eric predicted, he was also pretty good. He had 2 to 3 Delver decks, Miracles, and also Dredge as well. So yeah, Andreas Ganz, thank you very much for making our prediction come true.
Yeah, why don't you guys, I guess... We can talk about the event. So I didn't go. Tully also wants to hear about the event. So why don't you guys tell us about how your tournaments went?
Yeah, Eric, I think you actually arrived a couple of days or even a week before me and played a couple of local tournaments, right?
I did. Yeah, I went a week early to. Because it's a trip to Europe, so I figured that I could go early and play in these tournaments that were looking pretty good. The prizes looked great. There was a bunch of dual lands available to win. Seemed like a good way to practice some paper Magic before the GP for me. So yeah, I decided to go a week early and play in the side event Legacy. So day 1 was main event Vintage side event Legacy. Day 2 was main event Legacy and Modern, I think. But anyway, I played in the side event Legacy on day 1, and I split the finals. So I made it to the finals. I lost 1 round in Swiss, and then I beat the quarters and semifinals, and then split the finals. And then in day 2, I went undefeated, and then we split the top 8 because it just made a lot of sense to split the top 8 based on the prize structure, basically.
You're saying there was a lot of money involved, like there always is in Italy? That's a big thing about their tournaments. That really attracts me as well, that they have really good payouts.
Yeah, the payouts were great. I wanted to play because it would have been sweet to just make it to the finals 2 days in a row. But the way that it was structured, basically everybody wanted to split, and the way that the prize structure was if you took the split for top 8, you would get more money than if you got 3rd and 4th place. So it didn't really make sense to play.
Yeah, I think that's how it works out most of the time, that you would need to get to the finals to make it work. And you played Grixis Delver all the time, right? You didn't touch Black Red Reanimator for the entire weekend.
Yeah, that's right. I played Grixis Delver in all 3 events, in the 2 Four Seasons events the week before, and then in the main event I played Grixis Delver as well.
There's a crazy amount of tournaments. Like even this weekend, I think you were not there this weekend anymore, right? But there was a big one, the Nebraska Spar, in close to Florence, I think in Lucca, that's near Pisa. And I think Cyrus actually won. Oh, no, Cyrus lost in the finals to Blue-Green Food Chain, but we're going to talk about that later. It's just crazy how much Magic there was.
No, he did well in the Vintage, not in the Legacy. He scrubbed the Legacy.
I think he went... Oh, no, it was Tomasz Ma, who went to the finals. Yeah, you're right. It's kind of crazy how Cyrus won the Vintage, and like everybody expected him to. And people say like there's so much variance in Vintage. But last couple of big events, Cyrus has been doing crazy with the Storm deck. He even says that he doesn't really think that the Perfect Storm is very good in Vintage right now. But yeah, I talked to him like, why are you still doing so well with it? What are people doing wrong? And he said, well, people are overvaluing their hate cards. They get like Gadok Teakdown and they think they can never lose. And obviously that's not the case. But yeah, so for me, I arrived on Thursday of the GP. Like I took a train in the morning, and like for half of the trip I was editing our last podcast episode. And then I played a little bit of Switch, arrived in the evening. We picked up Anorak straight from the airport. By the way, shout outs to Chex, our local Italian friend who basically drove us around and was our local Italian connection, I guess. And yeah, then I think we go to... No, Eric, you went there at that point. You were, I think, grinding or something. Then we went to some store, and Anorak tried to pick up a camera because he had actually gotten that backpack, that live view backpack, because he wanted to stream from the GP floor, but the camera didn't work. But long story short, we never got the camera to work, but still big shout-outs to him for the commitment, because that was like a lot of work and money that went into at least trying to make it work, so that was pretty cool. And yeah, I didn't really get to play until the actual PTQ, which I pretty much scrapped out, so not too much for me to say about that. I think I went like 3-3 or something. Didn't really feel it. Eric, did you do better at the PTQ? I think you almost got the buys or the top 8 or even?
No, I went 2-2 and dropped. I lost to round 2 Miracles, which is one of the tougher matchups, and the player was quite good, so it was I lost. And then the next round I played against Burn and just got wrecked by Burn, so I dropped and called it a day. I figured if I played Grinders after that and I lost the Grinders, it would just make the main event much worse for me.
Oh, I should have known that. Yeah, I jumped into a grinder and I lost in the first round. I was quite frustrated. Didn't really play well in the first place. So yeah, Friday was a bit of a disaster for me, but I still felt like good about the GP. I made a couple of changes. I had a very, very strong anti-graveyard, anti-combo deck sideboard. I was playing Green-White Maverick, and I decided, okay, I think I noticed while sideboarding that I didn't really have much to do in the fair mirror, where you often side out like Thalia and Gadok Teak. So I changed my sideboard up a little bit. I brought in more like Knights of Autumn and Banishing Light again and stuff like that. Ended up cutting Tormod's Crypt, which came back to bite me on day 2. But overall, I'm feeling really, really good. I'm actually going to link my deck list in the show notes of this, and I'm feeling really, really good about the Green-White Maverick deck I was playing at the event. And I think, Eric, you also... Didn't you you did even better than me in the main event. Maybe let's hear from you first.
Yeah, so I had no buys, so that's already, starting out from ground zero, and I ended up losing round 1 to the Mirror, which was an unfortunate way to start the event. And then round 2, I almost lost. I was playing against Mono Red Stompy, which can be pretty tough for Delver, and they beat me game 1, so it was pretty tight for me to manage to get the win there. And so it was like not the best start to a tournament, almost starting out 0-2. And then I lost round 4. So I started out 2-2, which, I kept playing because, I have a chance to win the rest of the day and make it into day 2. And luckily that's what happened. I ended up winning all my matches that day. And then, so I ended up 6-2, and then I won the first. They do the first round of day 2 on day 1. Basically, they cut to day 2, and then you play the first round still on that day. And I won that one. So I started out 7-2, which is, pretty good start. That's actually the same record I had in GP Atlanta, where I felt very good about my day one chances going into day two for potential top 8. Even though I had a much better start in Atlanta, I ended up with the same record at the end of the first 9 rounds. And then I ended up, I played pretty well, but towards the end of the day, my mind was starting to slip. I actually got some GRVs. I made some pretty like ridiculous plays and was starting to feel the fatigue. And
do you remember what you did?
Yeah, I can tell you what I did in a minute, but I ended up picking up my third loss to Zen Takahashi, who's a friend of Javier Dominguez and Mengucci. What happened there was I made a very bad play because I didn't realize that there was mana floating from days, and I probably should have called a judge and tried to get my play reround because there was no like visualization of the mana, and it's just like I wouldn't have made the play I did if I realized there was mana floating, and I ended up just playing fairly poorly the rest of that match and lost. But I ended up winning out from there, so I ended up 12-3. The big fatigue brain fart thing that I had, which really made me realize a lot of the time when you see these people on camera and people go, oh, people at that level, they would never make this mistake, they're cheating or whatever. My opponent didn't accuse me of cheating or anything, but I know if I saw what I did on camera, I would think this person might be cheating, even though it looked so ridiculous. But basically what I did was at the end of my opponent's turn, I cast a Brainstorm, knowing I needed to find a land because my hand was landlight, and I didn't find a land, but I had a Ponder. So I untap and I cast Ponder, and I'm thinking in my head, I really need to find a fetch land. And I picked up my entire deck and started looking like I'm looking for a fetch land with the Ponder sitting there on the table. And my opponent goes, what are you doing? And I'm like, oh my God, I don't know what I'm doing. And I was just like complete brain fart, just thinking about fetch land. And we called a judge and I explained to them and I got a GRV. And they shuffled my deck, I think. Yeah. Anyway.
Wouldn't they keep one card on top since you brainstormed?
Yeah, they kept that card. Yeah, they made sure to keep the brainstorm cards. Everything was correct, and they shuffled the bottom part that I had seen.
Makes sense. But yeah, you finished 12-3. That's really good. I've gone 12-3 a few times, but every time I do, it's like at first when the first time it happened, it was like, oh yeah, this is normal, because I went 12-3 and then 13-2, and then proceeded not to go 12-3 for like years. So I think 12-3 is a very good finish.
Yeah, I was happy with it, especially without the buys. It'll be kind of cool when nobody has buys and everybody's fighting for top 8 without buys. That'll be
I am so happy about that announcement. I think most of us are, because as Legacy players, or primarily focused on Legacy, we just don't go out and play that much. Especially in Europe, like there's no SCG Tour, so it's just really hard to grind Planeswalker points. So this year I only had 1 buy, and next year I probably was going to have 0, but now I'm glad that everybody else has 0. So I think this changes will be really, really good for just like the more casual Magic player. But also it's just more fair, like that way, like when you top 8 a tournament, like you were one of the best 8 people and not one of like, the best 4 people plus the other 4 people who also had a big edge. So I like that.
Yeah, I agree. How about you, Julian? How was your tournament?
I finished in 66th place, which is equivalent to a record of 10-3-2. And I'm still kicking myself because I feel so stupid for intentionally drawing the last round, because there was no point. Like if I lost the last round, I would still get the, I think, $250. If I draw it, I get the $250. And if I won it, I would get $400 for a top 32 finish. And like I was actually the one who suggested the draw because I misunderstood Michael Bonda. Like, no, that's not on him, right? I misunderstood him when he said I could do that, and he actually meant I should play. And I didn't really like take enough time to look it up. And then, like, as we are shuffling up and we already signed the slip, I'm like, actually, it doesn't make sense if we draw. We should just play for it because we're guaranteed. And my opponent, like, no blame on him, right? He was like, okay, actually, I'd rather just take the draw. And since we already signed it, I was like, okay, whatever. But he still wanted to play against me because I guess he knew me and he really wanted to play. So we played it out and I easily won. So it felt like an 11-3-1 for a top 32 finish, but I was stupid in the books. It's a 10-3-2 for 66th place, which I still is good, and like, don't want to say good enough. I almost said that, but it felt like a good finish, like a good weekend, because I felt like the deck performed really well. To quickly go over my matchups, in the first round, I got a very frustrating draw. By the way, I had no buys. For the first time in 9 years of playing GPs, I didn't have any buys for the GP, which felt quite different, but I kind of liked it. Yeah, I played a lot of Magic, and that felt really good. So yeah, in the first round, I got a very frustrating draw. I was quite vocal about that on Twitter. It was just like after the first minute, I knew if this goes to 3 games, it's gonna be a draw, because at this pace, there's no way we're gonna make it through 3 games. So yeah, I got that draw against green-white depth. Then I got a couple of easier-ish wins against Buck food stuff, I want to call it, like not good stuff, but food stuff. Then against a Mary artifact control, so not like the crazy all-in Ursa deck, but more like a slower Topta sword deck. Then I won against Beakdown, which I guess the deck is supposed to do. Then I won against the guy who was the runner-up in the PTQ on the previous day with Death in Texas. Then I got a pretty close loss to post-Eldrazi, which meant I had my back against the wall, because at that point I'm X1-1. And in this round, I'm actually paired against our friend Calum from the UK. And it always feels bad when you sit down and you know one of you two is gonna like leave the event, or like has to basically drop out of the event after this match. And in the third game, he's playing 4-color control, by the way. And in the third game, it really looks like I'm totally out of it. He's on the play. No, I'm on the play, which makes it even worse. And I mulligan down to 4 on the play, and he keeps 7. And as much as I talk about how I'm always confident in everything, at this point I'm really like, okay, maybe like if I lose this early, maybe I should take an earlier night train home or something. It felt really bad to go down to 4. But then I just managed to do it. I run out Thalia on the second turn, and on his third turn he taps out for Plague Engineer to get rid of the Thalia. And then I just slam Choke, and he has like 2 islands and a basic swamp in play. And then I rip Gideon from the top, Gideon Elf of Sandika, which I borrowed from Eric like on the night before. I was like, I really need something more mid-rangey, control-y, so let's just play that. And you happen to have like a Korean or Japanese copy. That was pretty cool.
Korean.
So yeah, I felt sorry for Caleb, but felt good to come back there. And then the last round, basically win it in for day 2. I'm paired against the winner of the PTQ of the previous day, who also happened to play Death in Texas, into the, well, quote-unquote feature match area, which I guess without video coverage didn't really mean much, but it was nice to have a lot of space. And I also ended up winning that one. So into day 2, and like Eric mentioned, we're actually playing the first round of day 2, which is round 9 on this day as well. So I play against Bug Control, and I finish it pretty quickly. It's just so many of my matches playing Maverick I won by wastelanding Delver decks, or even like Bug Control decks out. Like the decks that didn't play Astrolabe, or maybe my opponent didn't get to see Astrolabe. It's crazy when you play Green White Maverick how hard that can be on your mana, especially when you play. Well, I had like a one-off that I really wanted to play in the main deck, which was Aven Mind Sensor, because I felt like, okay, I need more against Death in Texas and the Mirror. And on top of like changing my sideboard, I also added Aven Mind Sensor to the main deck, and that also got a couple of people really good. So yeah, that's my first day. So I'm 7-1-1 on the first day. And I finished the second day at 4-2, or actually, no, not 4-2, 3-2-1, including the draw in the end. So, yeah, my losses on the second day were against Hogak, which is kind of funny. I don't remember his name. I think his name is Kai. And I sit down, I'm like, hey, your name sounds familiar. And he's like, oh, yeah, actually, I shouldn't tell you what I play. Because he's apparently like a really good limited player from Munich, whom I've never seen before. But I guess it makes sense. I don't play a lot of limited. And he was actually like messaging me on Twitter a couple days before the event about his deck choice, Hogak and stuff. And I was like, yeah, go for it. And then he crushes me with Hogak because I ended up like only playing 3 surgical extractions as Graveyard Hate. But it was fun. And the other loss I picked up was against Ruck Okolands, which completely destroyed me. Like they actually like turned it around. When I'm usually the guy wastelanding them, I got wastelanded pretty hard. But yeah, I won against Buck Snow midrange. I won against Big Eldrazi, but that was one of the coolest matches. I think in the third game I went down to 2 life against their 30 or something. But then I have a knight, and I put Batterskull on the knight, and the knight is 18-18. So I literally, my finger touches the knight, and I gain 18 life. It was absurd, and they could never remove it somehow. So yeah, that was one of the coolest matches where I managed to come back. And my last win on round 13 was against 5-color control. I guess you could imagine what that looks like, but it was not the Thomas Mar kind. It was more like a miracle kind. And they also played Humility. And it's so funny because with this match of like weird humility creatures with equipment against his Oko and other planeswalkers, And the match finished 1-0-1, so we didn't even get to finish the second game because the match went so incredibly long. And at some point, I was even wondering if I could deck him in the second game. But yeah, that was one of the coolest matches. I actually I took a picture of that, and I'm also going to put that in the show notes of the final game stat. That looked pretty good. So yeah, got the cash finish. Would have hoped to finish even higher, but yeah, I'm feeling really good about the weekend, and was really one of the best GP weekends I ever had, I gotta say.
Awesome.
Yeah, that sounds like a really fun event. I'm kind of sad I didn't get to go. So we talked about the top 8. I thought one really cool thing that happened in terms of coverage was Frank Karsten did the coverage, and he actually, because GP is online submission, he was able to get basically every single list, and he did a pretty good job of classifying everything. I found a few errors here and there, but I think that's bound to happen with like over 1,000 lists. And so he basically classified everything, so we could see like the day 1, the day 2 breakdown. You could even see like how many of each copy of each card was played. So there were definitely a few things that stood out to me. One of the things was that like Veil of Summer was like one of the most played cards from 2019. Like every single deck was playing it, like combo deck, miracles, like Delver decks. Like it was just like everything had that one card. And I don't know. What did you guys have like any takeaways from like the deck breakdowns or the card breakdowns?
I just noticed that there, Eric, correct me if I'm wrong, but I felt like there was a lot of talk about banning Veil of Summer on that weekend. Like the big thing was Veil of Summer, Oko, and Astrolabe. But I think Astrolabe and Veil of Summer were the most talked about cards. And that was, I don't want to say surprising to me, because I definitely saw and still see the power of Veil of Summer. It's probably because I'm usually playing decks that don't fall prey to Veil of Summer, that I don't value it as highly. I think it's cool that it's around, but apparently it's causing a lot of issues in the blue mirrors.
Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, let me interject real quick, because we got a listener question that is basically related. So this is their words. I know we're a bit ban wary, so I'm going to phrase this in a different way. 4 and 5 color pile decks have started to turn up at numbers that are startling. What counterplay exists in the format against Arkham's Astrolabe? I.e., are there archetypes that can play against it? Are there specific cards that we should play against it? Before, we used to be able to punish these decks with Wasteland, Blood Moon, Back to Basics, but now like these decks literally play Blood Moon and Back to Basics some of the time. So instead of calling for bans immediately, let's talk about how we can beat it, which I agree with. I think, at a certain point, maybe Astrolabe in particular might have to go. But in terms of how we can combat it now, we should think about that too. I know we've talked about it a little bit before. We've talked about cards that like things that don't work are like cards that put you down a card. So like something like a Braid, it's just like it's a horrible trade because they already drew a card and paid 1 mana. But something like Collector Oof, I think, is a pretty good answer for it. I don't know if you played Collector Oof, Julian.
I did.
Do you think it was strong against those snow decks, or do you think it's just like a wimpy 2/2, like it wasn't that good?
I wouldn't say it was strong, but I certainly brought it in against decks that heavily relied on Astrolabe, because I noticed they often would fetch 2 basic islands against me and then have an Astrolabe in play. And that creature, especially if you had Thalia around, was quite problematic for them, but I wouldn't go as far as to call it like good or strong or anything or something I really wanted to see, but it certainly made life more complicated for my opponents. And I think that if you're playing a Green Sun Sunnet deck, that card should probably be at least in your sideboard. Yeah, probably in your sideboard. That's where it's supposed to be.
Well, yeah, what other ways do you guys think we can attack Astrolabe?
I mean, I'm not sure if we even really need to. Those decks don't seem... I could be wrong. I think they have the potential to get stronger, but I don't think those decks are so strong that you're supposed to be playing them. I feel like the meta, at least right now since it's so new, is pretty open in that all the decks are fine. All the Delver strategies seem fine. All the control strategies seem fine. Yes, they all probably should play Astrolabe. And the combo decks all seem fine too. So and the creature decks. Everything seems fine. I don't think anything... It's maybe your Blood Moons aren't good against control anymore. So don't try and fight on that axis anymore.
Shoutouts to Niklas Hartmann, who piloted 5 color control with 2 Blood Moons in the sideboard to, I think, also a cash finish in the GP. That's a certain kind of madness to actually be like, oh, what do I want to play in my 5 color deck? Actually, I want to play Blood Moon. I guess that speaks towards how ineffective Blood Moon is against these decks.
I mean, when you have an Astrolabe and they have a Blood Moon, it's just like, okay, cool. I don't really care about your card at all.
Yeah, so they play Blood Moon for like Delver, so Blood Moon's good against Delver. If that's how you want to fight against Delver, then you can play Blood Moon. But it's not like the fact that they're able to cast their cards and have a Blood Moon as a sideboard card against Delver or Eldrazi is. I don't see that as particularly problematic unless the win percentage of those decks becomes so high that like more than half the top 8 or just winning every tournament kind of thing. But I don't really think that the deck is there yet.
So in terms of stats, well, I do know whenever Wizards bans a card, they definitely talk about win percentage. So that's one thing they talked about a lot when they banned Rug Delver and Sensei's Dividing Top Miracles. So I think win percentage, I agree, is going to be the key. And if we see these Astrolabe decks start to outperform, then maybe it'll be more on the table. But I do want to point out that from what I could tell, the day 1 conversion of the Astrolabe decks to day 2 was really strong. Looks like it's hard to say because they have a few different categories. But when I looked at my breakdown, I saw that like day 1 of the GP, about like there were like 8 to 10% of decks that played Astrolabe, but then overall in the overall metagame, it's closer to like 15%. So that definitely stood out to me. That these decks did fairly well at the GP. But they definitely aren't like dominating. Like I know we just had a format playoffs, which was a Magic Online tournament, and that was actually won by Death and Taxes. So a very classical like mana denial deck was able to beat these greedy mana decks.
Yeah, I think Death and Taxes overall, even though people, and me included, thought that would still suffer quite a bit from Plague Engineer, is doing quite well. Like we mentioned, it went to both Death and Taxes players in the finals of the PTQ on Friday. That's pretty good. Then Daryl took down the Legacy playoffs with an 11-1 record, it says. So I think also even Michael Bonder played it pretty deep into the GP. I think he ended up losing to Lorenzo Tassona, I could think, who made top 8 with Bugdiver. So if you're playing Death and Taxes, I think that's a pretty good spot. I saw a lot of Mirroring Crusaders, which I almost ended up playing myself in Maverick because I felt like, oh, that's a really good card. It also has protection from Oko, which is kind of nice. It also can't be blocked by X, so that's an upside. Other than that, something I saw, for example, Eric doing the sideboard, and I think Lorenzo, who went to the top 8 in his Backdiver, even played in the main deck, were 2 copies of Bitter Blossom, which I think are like good against Oko, as long as you're playing against Oko decks that don't run Plague Engineer. So if you're playing against, for example, Mark Vogt decks, Mark Vogt's deck, who won the GP, and he's playing the 4-color Miracles without black, then Bitter Blossom is probably a really good choice. So I wonder if the actual way to beat those 4 and 5 color decks is to really not attack their mana in the first place and really just try to beat Oko. Because once you beat Oko, the rest of the deck isn't all that impressive because it really lacks a clock most of the time. It's not that threatening. But Oko is just... It's the first time where I sometimes really feel, okay, maybe I should really just try to outrace the Planeswalker because he's so hard to kill. I don't know. I'm still undecided on that, but I think, yeah, maybe it's really not about attacking the mana, and it's more about finding ways around Oko. And maybe Veil of Summer is part of that puzzle. I don't know. Could be.
Yeah.
Well, the thing that stands out to me is, like, basically all these blue decks are playing Red Blast and Veil of Summer, and that's what I kind of find more problematic, is that, like, they're able to fit in all of the good spells, more or less. And I don't know, that's the part that sticks out to me. So maybe the answer is just ban Veil of Summer, but I think if Astrolabe were not in the format, then we would see like Bug decks, Rug decks, Grixis decks, instead of like all of these like everything decks.
Soup decks.
Yeah, I agree with that, but I do think that actually Veil of Summer is the problem card. I don't think... Oko's really frustrating to play against, but you could just Pyroblast it. You already have all the answers you need for Oko.
Can you?
It's just... yeah, so... yeah, I mean, if you're playing red. But so Oko is frustrating because its loyalty so high and it does take over the games, but I don't really see it as problematic because it's quite answerable. Veil of Summer, on the other hand, the reason I'm saying I could see that one being banned in the future is for the thing that you just said is people are playing 5 colors so they can play Pyroblast and Veil of Summer. And I'm seeing Veil of Summer going into a lot of main decks. Blue fair main decks, combo main decks. Like this card, I think, is the Renin 6, is like Renin 6, where it just kind of looked pretty good at first, but now people are starting to see what it really does, and they're putting it in their main deck, and it's kind of absurd what it does. So I don't know. I just played a league with blue green Omnitel, which I had played in the past, and that excuse me. I had played in the past, and it was a donation deck, and I had recommended to the person who donated that we cut all the spell pierces and just put Veil of Summer, even though it's dead in some matchups. But that card just wins counter wars and beats combo decks. So I think since we're starting to see it creep up in a lot of main decks, I think this card might end up being problematic in the long run. I don't see it yet, but I think it could get there.
Interesting. Yeah, that was like, let's talk about decks that we think might be well positioned. So that Omnitel deck is one of them that I was looking at, like potentially exploring further. Like against Delver, like traditionally, Show and Tell has had a pretty soft Delver matchup just because it was really hard to play around days and all those things. But then when you have Veil of Summer in your deck, you usually can just lead on Veil of Summer, and then that forces the Delver player to like start like casting their counter spells. Otherwise, they don't do anything. And then sure, if they play a bunch of like soft counters, you can be like, okay, you just wasted a bunch of spells on my 1 mana spell. I'll try to combo again next turn. So I think that's like a pretty powerful play pattern that might give these Show and Tell games decks some game against Delver.
Yeah, if you think about it, it's actually quite cool. It's on your combo turn. Veil of Summer functions as a 1-mana Show and Tell they have to counter pretty much, which like makes it really hard for them to counter all the spells they need to.
Yeah, and that's what. So there's like a new test, the Epic Storm list that people are playing that has, I think, 4 Veil of Summer in the main, and that's exactly the play pattern they're trying to go for. And it plays really well with Echo of Eons as well, because you just cast Veil of Summer, and they basically have to counter it, and then you just combo. And if they don't counter it, then you're everything that they draw off of their Echo, like their counter spells, are no good. So
we're actually coming full circle again. That feels like the old Iggy Pop decks, or even when you went something like Silence or Orm's Chant, and then you went Ill-Gotten Gains, and even if they got something back, they couldn't do anything. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, but the difference is instead of just casting Silence and they don't get to do anything, you have another application where it can just like counter Thoughtseize or counter Tendrils and draw you a card, and yeah, it has so many more applications than just Silence. But yeah,
it actually works the way that, like, I want to say newbies used to use Silence. Like, they see you tap your lands and they're like, oh, Silence counter, or like your spells on a stack, and they try to use Silence to counter it. And with like Veil of Summer, that actually kind of works if it's a counter spell, which is actually really cool. I don't know, I like the card a lot, but I'm definitely listening to all of you guys who've played against the card a lot, who are saying it's a problem. So I can definitely see that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not seeing it as a problem yet, but since I'm seeing so many like ways of using it that are just now starting to kind of pop up with these combo decks, and
I think
it's kind of made Belcher a good deck again, which is insane, believe it or not. I mean, it's still not great, but it's actually pretty good if you're playing Echo of Eons and Veil of Summer.
Mm-hmm. I think more decks play Veil of Summer than played Renin 6, so that's something to consider, I guess. I mean, literally every green deck plays it. So, like, for a really long time, I didn't play it in slow depths because I was like, I don't actually need this effect. Usually proactive discard is a little bit better in terms of what you want to do. But now I just ended up playing them in my sideboard because I'm like, okay, everybody and their mother is playing Veil of Summer, so Hymn to Turok's no longer good. What's my anti-combo hate? Okay, I guess I'll just play Veil of Summer. And just add that to the fact that, like, I wasn't bringing it in against the blue decks because I was always like, it doesn't actually counter that many things that I care about. Like, Force of Will, I can just discard it instead. But then instead, I'm bringing it in and trying to find situations where I, like, bait them into trying to counter my crop rotation, and then I Veil of Summer, and then it's just such a blowout. So it's just, like, such a powerful card that even though it's, like, not exactly what I want to be doing in the depths deck, I'm still playing it.
Yeah, and part of all of that is why I was recommending something like Eldrazi or even Dredge, because those kind of decks, they get to ignore most of that stuff. Like, a Dredge doesn't really get to ignore Red Blast, because if it's on a draw, then can sometimes get its Careful Study or even Breakthrough Red Blasted. But overall, these are decks that don't really care too much about that aspect of the metagame. And also Maverick doesn't really care about that at all. And I can only say again, like, I'm feeling really good about Maverick right now in the metagame. That's something that I also would look into. It's just, I feel my sideboard is just not big enough to, like, I always have to leave a weak spot. In this tournament, it was graveyard stuff, and I got punished. But you can also, like, be like, okay, maybe I'm gonna win against Sneak Show without any kind of banishing lights. So I guess there's no way to really construct the perfect deck, even though I think something like, I don't know, Eric, how do you feel about Grixis Delver? I always feel like Grixis Delver is good against everything.
I think Grixis Delver has game against everything. The build that I played, it's a little bit weak to the grindier controlling decks. I actually have put 2 Bedlam Revelers, and so Bitter Blossom was, well, I played 2 Bitter Blossoms in the 4 seasons because I felt like it was the best way to beat Miracles because it couldn't be red blasted, and it was 2 mana. I'm not a big fan of Bitter Blossom, but it did turn out to be like, if you can play that card on turn 2, and then you don't really need to do anything else except for counter the things that answer it or their mentors. So it's pretty good there. And it's not that good against the black-based grindy control decks because of Plague Engineer. So I ended up cutting the second one and putting 2 Bedlam Revelers in my sideboard to...
Oh, you did? Okay.
Yeah, to try and fight on that angle, and that seems pretty good. But those matchups are not the best. And Death and Taxes, we have a very good sideboard, but game 1 you basically have to Delver them. To beat Death and Taxes you have to have like a good Delver hand. So that's not a great matchup either. But other than that, everything else feels pretty darn good. Like all the combo decks feel really good. Depths feels really good. What else? Even the creature decks feel pretty good. Like Maverick and things like that felt, pretty good for me.
So I don't know if anybody's played this deck, but I was wondering if it might be decent, which is like either Bant or Blue-Green Food Chain. So this deck actually won Nebraska's War, which had about over 200 people. And the thing that appeals to me about this deck is you get to play a bunch of mana dorks, and so that's mana acceleration that you don't really see in blue decks anymore since they banned Deathrite Shaman. And then you get to curve into broken 3 mana plays like Teferi, Time Raveler, or Oko, Thief of Crowns. And then you can also leverage the mana to combo as well. So I don't know, do you guys have any opinions on Food Chain?
It's funny you mentioned that because just today I was talking to Marius Hausmann about that list because he's also got a long history with Food Chain. He won MKM Milan a couple of years ago with Bug Food Chain at the time. And he's really looking into either playing Blue-Green Food Chain or, like you mentioned, Barn Food Chain. And yeah, so I played it a couple of months ago as a donation deck list, and it was really good. I liked it a lot. And for somebody who doesn't really give a lot of credit to Teferi, I felt that card was insane in this deck. Even if you just bounced your Icefang Codals and replayed them, the card advantage was real. I wonder how good that deck actually is, because it doesn't really care all that much about Oko, does it?
It shouldn't.
Do you know how Oko works with Food Chain? Do they still have a CMC, or do you add 1 mana? I don't know.
They have CMC. They just lose their abilities.
Okay. So yeah, it's like they Oko your thing, and you're like, yeah, you can still recast your Mist Hologryphins. You're like, okay, cool, I'll still go Infinite or whatever. I don't know. I think that's an interesting deck that I might explore more. I'm interested in the Blue-Green Show and Tell deck. If that deck is good against Delver, or at least reasonable, then generally I think Show and Tell is ahead against almost everything except for Delver and Reanimator. So that's worth exploring some more. Particularly, it's good against Death and Taxes if you have 4 Omniscience, for instance. What other decks are kind of on my radar? I think.
So what is Humans like? Because we've been talking about Humans and how I always want to try Humans, and I finally went ahead and actually tried out Humans, and the deck felt like a blast to play. Apparently, people later told me I played the completely wrong list because it was a heavily metagamed list that Travis played in the LPL against Autumn and expected a certain kind of metagame to come out of them. But I enjoyed it a lot. That deck was crazy fun, but only really if you get a wild. Actually, Eric, we played. Oh my god, I remember that. Somebody made that a clip, a highlight when I went 2, 3, 4 on the wilds. Oh my god.
I was playing a horrible Eldrazi deck. I'm not a big fan of playing Eldrazi. But I think that deck's a ton of fun. I haven't really played it since the Ren and 6 ban, so I'm not really sure, but I do really like it. And if you said it was a blast, and other people seem to be having some success with it. So I don't really know, but I'm a big fan of that deck.
Yeah, I also like that it wasn't that weak to Plague Engineer with what I think Itai called the best Lord in Legacy, Thalia's Lieutenant. That was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, my experience playing against Humans is they always keep a anti-depths hand, and then I just play Plague Engineer on turn 3 and Abrupt Decay one thing, and then they just scoop. So I don't know. I can't say that many good things about it from the depths matchup side, but obviously it's really good against Storm. I think it's ahead against Show and Tell. It's ahead against Delver. It is really bad against Moon Stompy, but that deck has mostly gone away because of Astrolabe. People are back on kind of Eldrazi Post or Big Eldrazi in terms of like the Chalice deck du jour, because that one is actually good against the Astrolabe decks. Oh, the other deck I actually think might be the best deck, and I only say might be because I'm always like, I just don't really like this deck, but it's Bant Miracles, probably splashing Red Blast. Also playing Accumulated Knowledge. I just think Accumulated Knowledge goes so far over the top of the Delver decks and the other like black Oko decks that I think it's just better.
So you're basically looking at something like Mark was playing, but with Accumulated Knowledge. But what would you actually cut from the deck? Like, would you not play Oko anymore, or would you like cut back on Okos?
No, they still play Oko. Basically, they just play like a more minimal Planeswalker suite. I know Anurag and Rugved have been playing like lists like that, so I think they maybe play like 4 or 5 Planeswalkers to fit in the 4 AKs. I'm not sure what else they cut. I know they also like when you play AK and Treat also gets much better because you just make all your land drops. So that's where I would look, is an AK Miracles build might be one of the best decks at the moment.
Also, Mystic Sanctuary. Oh yeah, we didn't talk about Miracles at all, like up until now, right? But that Mystic Sanctuary in that deck, like whether you played with AK or the way Mark played it and at the GP, whoa, that was doing so much work. I saw it do so many crazy things, and even like Mark told me, sometimes you really just go and treat the Angels, Mystic Sanctuary back on top, make more Angels, and chunt your opponent pretty much. And well, I'm still thrilled to see how well that thing is performing. Because when it came out, I was like, yeah, I think it's gonna see play, but this was even better than I thought it would be.
I mean, I think it's totally stupid. Like, I think if it were not an island, it would still be very good. The fact that it's an island just means that, like, you just can never beat these decks if you're trying to play a fair game. Like, it's just, like, it's so ridiculous that's like, I can just fetch this, Entreat the Angels, or Extra Swords of Plowshares, or my draw 3 off Accumulated Knowledge. Like, once these decks get going, it's done. Like, I think previously Sensei's Divining Top added a certain level of consistency, but, like, now I think you get it back with Mystic Sanctuary. Like, that's how good I think this card is.
Well, yeah. Mark was even telling me the entire weekend, like from start to finish, I feel really good about my deck. I feel really, really good about this. And yeah, he went ahead and ended up taking down the GP. Did you see the video where he was like so elated he won? He almost started tearing up and like went down on his knees. That felt like a really cool moment. And I'm so happy that we actually managed to catch that on tape, even though it wasn't like officially broadcast.
I did see that. That was cool.
That's cool, right?
Yeah.
Another deck that I want to talk about, which when I was looking at the list, I almost felt like, hey, this is actually what Eric and Bob were kind of talking about in the last episode when you guys were brainstorming like a new deck with like a bunch of accelerators and then a bunch of very impactful 3-drops, similar to what Reed Duke used to play when he won a GP with basically 8 accelerators and 4 Leovold and 4 Julian Nemesis. That's what Tristan Pölzl is actually playing from France. He's also got 8 accelerators. He's playing, 2 Gilded Goose, 2 Noble Hierarch, and then 4 Green Sun Senate, which are accelerators as well. And then 4 Okos. And I guess the other ones you could count as like impactful 3-drops are like Leovold and also 2 Cursor of Krufix, which can also sometimes just run away with the game, especially with something like Civ Library or even just Brainstorm. And on top of that, he's just got your usual blue stuff, or he's got Brainstorm, Force of Us. He's got 19 blue cards, which is barely enough, I would say, to make it work. He's also playing the 4 Ice Fang Codals, and then just a couple of Green Sun Senate targets. Like, people sometimes call this Bug Maverick, I guess because you have the selection with the Green Sun Senate, but it doesn't really... I guess it plays a mid-range game as well. And yeah, I guess it also makes really good use of Tireless Tracker, which I kind of like. Yeah, this deck went all the way to the finals. I think Tristan might have even been undefeated in the Swiss. Pretty cool. And if I had more time, I would have already tried this deck because this feels something I would enjoy quite a bit. I wonder how much value he got out of the rogue factor. Like, nobody knew what he was doing.
I'm guessing he's just really good.
He's insanely good. He's probably one of the best European players.
Because this deck is insane. I tried it. It's lacking in removal. The sideboard is...
This is a typical, like, you know how there's this gang of Tristan and Pierre Sommen, who also won a GP, and Liche, and like we always used to say, like Liche is the siege gang commander, and Tristan and Pierre are like his tokens, and now they show up as well. And they always play sideboards like this. A ton of one-offs, always the one-off leyline, they always have the one-off leyline. And
why?
That's, like if you didn't show me the name and you showed me this sideboard, I would tell you this is one of those three guys because they always do that.
Yeah.
Don't ask me why.
I found when I was playing this deck, I would go to sideboard and be like, there's no cards worth taking in against most decks.
Really? I don't know. It feels like it has a lot of stuff that you could do, but I guess something like Burn,
Stone, Pithing Needle, Trinisphere.
Carpet of Flowers is going to give you a lot of leverage.
I love the Caracas without the crop rotation. I love the 2 main deck Abrupt Decays, and by love I mean hate. I agree.
like
this
it.
deck is kind of a pile. Like, I think we were. I don't know.
Astrolabes.
Like, obviously, I think this is one of those decks that, like, if you are the creator and you know exactly what's going on, you know exactly what to do in every situation, you can use your skill to outplay people.
That's exactly what I was trying to say.
But I don't think it's like objectively good. I think I just like I'm not a huge fan of Green Sun Zenith as kind of a like card. Really, it's just not mana efficient enough. And Dryad Arbor is not a good mana dork.
I think it's okay. I think the Dryad Arbor is the one thing that makes Green Sun Senate like a good card. Without it, I would agree. It would basically be like a slightly better Living Wish, or even worse if you want. But by providing the 4 additional copies of Mana Acceleration, I think it's like a good card. Like I like Green Sun Senate a lot. I would actually call this like the European school of deck building almost, because I really like this. And a lot of people talk to me as well when I like build decks and I have like one-offs that I can't tutor for. And I'm always like, yeah, well, if I draw them, it's great. And if I don't draw them, I'm going to draw something else that's good. So,
well, that's why you had cantrips to your deck.
No, I just naturally draw and I find something. And he even has like Brainstorm, so that's even better.
Yeah, I think this deck, like what Bob was saying, is I bet the person who made this deck knows exactly why these numbers are the way they are, and so it works for them. But if you just pick it up, it's very unlikely to work for you. Unless you can figure out the exact reason for each number of, like, why are we playing 2 Abrupt Decays? Why is that our only removal? I guess there's 2 Astrolabes and the other things. To me, it's just like, I don't know. I was like, the games were just, the deck felt a little clunky. It felt like you were relying on Oko as your only removal spell most of the time, and the sideboard was like, I don't know what any of these cards are for. Like, what are we bringing in Pithing Needle against?
You tell me you can't figure out what you want to bring in Pithing Needle against? Come on.
No, not really. What are you bringing in Pithing Needle against?
I don't know.
Ether Vial, Dark Depths, Sneak Show. I mean, still, it's just a weird card to see.
He probably figured out that he would need help against them.
What?
I guess he just figured out that he would need help against these kind of decks where like Pithing Needle covers a lot of his bases.
But like Null Rod, why isn't Null Rod in there? Like Null Rod's better against half those things and a bunch of other stuff.
Well, he plays 2 Astrolabe and food, so you can't play Null Rod.
Yeah, and you also wouldn't use them against Depth or Sneak Show. Like I always liked Needle.
Pithing Needle isn't good against Depths. Anyway.
It's not good, but it helps.
Yeah, but wouldn't you rather have something that's good against Depths?
No, because you want to also have something that's good against other decks, right?
But I just don't think Pithing Needle is very good against anything.
Yeah, that's the point of the card, right? It's like okay against a lot of decks.
I think it's good against Death and Taxes and Sneak and Show, but that's it.
Is it good against Sneak and Show? I mean, you name Sneak Attack, but they're playing Show and Tell, and you're not playing anything that you can punish them for casting Show and Tell with.
Well, I guess you can Oko whatever they put into play, and you can also like sometimes like Grizzlebrand has a hard time attacking into Ice Fang Codal. Like they get to draw extra cards, but you also have Leobold. Like I've seen these interactions before when Marius played a similar deck, and it was like quite hard for them to really break through a Pithing Needle, unless they actually removed it, I guess.
Yeah, okay.
And that's where Veil of Summer comes in.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm excited for the deck. I can see why people wouldn't like it. I'm definitely going to try it out and see how it performs. A fun story from the top 8, actually. In the top 4, when Lorenzo Tassone played against Tristan, Lorenzo actually asked him, hey, are you this and this guy on Cockatrice? Because there's a guy on Cockatrice who's been playing this exact deck for a month. And Tristan's like, yes, that's me. So he figured out who he was just based on the deck he played that he hadn't seen anywhere before.
My favorite part of the story is that like both of these like presumably high level good. I don't know if they're like grinders or if they're mostly legacy players, but like they both just grind on cockatrice instead of Modo. So that's fun to me because I used to play that a lot.
Yeah, that is funny.
Yeah, as far as I know, they're like most Italians actually. They play on cockatrice. They sometimes even do like Twitch streams with cockatrice. There's not many Italians I know that play on Magic Online. Chex plays on Magic Online. Oh my god, that was so much fun, Eric. Remember when we played like in the middle of the night and Chex was trying to break Uppsala spells? And he did really well with it. I wonder why he didn't play it in the GP. he went like 4-1 into 4-1 all the time.
He played it in the playoffs.
Oh, he did?
Yeah.
How did he do?
I don't think he did very well.
So basically, he was like he had the turn 1 kill all the time, and then the opponent had the Forcible, and Chex would tell us, "Oh my god, the opponent had the nuts!"
Yeah.
Like, oh dude, you just had the turn 1 kill, and your opponent had the answer. How is that the nuts? And you don't understand. He has got the nuts. Like, okay. But yeah, it was great watching him play the deck. That was a lot of fun.
It was funny.
Yeah, and then Anorak actually brought his entire computer setup. Like, what? Like in the middle of the night, he was setting up like multiple screens and was starting to grind League of Legends. Like, I've never seen something like that before on like an Airbnb. Anyway, there's another spicy deck that Robert Cuellari, actually, I'm sorry, I don't know how to pronounce your name, but we met at the GP. And by the way, I want to give shout-outs to all the people who came to us and said hello at the GP. They thanked us for the podcast, for the IPL, even for our streams. And there was, I've never met this many people ever before at an event who just wanted to say hello, wanted to sign cards, wanted to take pictures. That was amazing. That was absolutely amazing. I ran out of all of my stickers I had. I only printed like 500 of one of them, and like I already lost like I don't have any of them left. Usually I gave out like 5 at a time, but whoa, that's something else. I actually gotta order new stickers now. But so what I wanted to get to was Robert's deck, and Robert actually played opposition, and I think he finished. Did he finish like 12-3 or something? Like he finished pretty high up. And if you're looking for some spice, I'm gonna link the deck list in the show notes. It's basically, is it Buck or is it, no, I think it's straight up blue-green opposition. No, it's Buck. Yeah, it has Buck as well. It's black as well. And just plays a bunch of mana dorks. It plays the draw engine of Elfish Missionary, Calling Oracle, and Symbiote. Does he even play Symbiote? I think he might play it as a 1. Yeah, he plays 3. Okay, I'm gonna trust you on that. And yeah, then he's just playing basically it's like an elf stack on steroids almost. Then he plays Oko as well, opposition to lock down the opponent, but also Garruk Wildspeaker, and that card is incredibly scary. I played against the deck a couple of years before at the Bazaar of Mox in Strasbourg, and that Garruk Wildspeaker basically comes down on the 3rd turn and threatens to kill you on the 4th turn. And that's incredibly scary, and a lot of people actually probably would like undervalue that. And then on top of that, he also added 2 Winter Orbs to the main deck because he felt like he needed something more against Miracles. So that's something else. Like if you're playing Miracles and the opponent goes turn at game 1 Winter Orb, I don't know. I want to see the face of that player. So yeah, overall the deck, looking at it probably has like a horrible game 1 against combo. And even game 2, it's probably not getting that much easier. But it's a ton of fun. It draws a bunch of cards, which I guess would attract a lot of people. So definitely check that one out. Is that something you guys would want to play? I guess it's a little bit tedious to play on Magic Online because of all the clicking for opposition.
Yeah, that would be the problem for me, but it does look sweet.
I'm always going to be a Debbie Downer. My question about this deck is like, so your main goal is to resolve a 4-mana blue enchantment that dies to Pyroblast, and then after that you don't win the game. So with that, I'm out. Obviously, I mean, I guess it's kind of fun in that, like, you're the only person taking game actions, like, your opponent's locked under Winter Orb, or you're, like, untapping a bajillion things with Wildspeaker, but I don't think it looks very good.
Yeah,
I
wouldn't even say that opposition's the main thing. Yeah, like what Eric is saying, right?
Yeah, it's got the Elves game plan with card advantage and
it has Crater Hoof.
Mana advantage and Crater Hoof, yeah. And then you also have blue cards. You've got Brainstorm and you've got Oko, and those are really good cards. So you're playing Elves with Oko and Brainstorm, and you just happen to be playing opposition.
That's fair. Those cards I can get more on board with.
That's what Bob likes. Maybe we should add Brainstorm to a couple. Like we should add Brainstorm to Eldrazi or something.
I mean, I just haven't played Brainstorm in a long time because of, like, I just feel like the blue decks, you have Force of Will, Force of Negation, but, like, I just think oftentimes, like, when I play blue decks, I don't mulligan very hard, and so I don't always have them. Obviously, games 2 and 3, I can mulligan more aggressively, but I don't know. I just feel like I like to play with more like broken things, and I haven't really liked what blue decks have been doing lately. In particular, like I just haven't been in love with Delver. Like there isn't this other great one drop. Like what are the best one drops? It's like Hex Drinker maybe. I'm not exactly sure. Like Grimag Angler, sort of. But yeah, I'm not super thrilled with Delver. It's definitely still putting up a good amount of results. But Death and Taxes is back too, so I don't know. There's always like this dance between the fair decks, and I always feel like one of the unfair decks that people aren't ready for, be it like Reanimator or Dredge or Hogak or Depths, like I feel like one of those decks for any given weekend, or Storm too, like has like the best win rate of the week, but over longer periods, obviously Delver and Death and Taxes are more consistent.
And more popular.
True.
Yeah, definitely more popular as well.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. I think Dredge is like nuts, and Reanimator's been performing pretty well for me since the GP. I've been playing it again, and it's feeling strong. And combo is just good.
So okay, I feel like I have to ask you one Reanimator question every podcast because I'm like always interested in the deck, and like but then every time I like draw hands with it I'm like like, and then I see it play out, it's like, okay, how many sideboard cards did my opponent draw? But like I guess the way you play it, your post-board games, like you're like almost always looking for like a way to beat, you know, surgical plus force, or like, you know, early interaction basically. And like even if your hand is like the turn one kill, if it doesn't have protection, you just mulligan. Like
Yeah.
I don't know, is that more or less right in terms of how you face the blue decks?
Yeah. I'm mulligan hands that just have like Entomb, Petal, Reanimator, or whatever. I'll mull those in sideboarded games, and yeah. Game ones I keep it because you don't know what your opponent's playing, but sideboarded games you want to beat the hate that you're expecting them to have. So these days, it's harder to guess what kind of hate they have because it's a newer meta and people are making their own deck lists. So it's harder to guess. And the way I've my most recent list to bypass that is just Lake of the Dead and Grave Titan, because that just ignores all graveyard hate.
I have such a hard time figuring out when I'm supposed to bring in Grave Titan. I built the deck upon your recommendation yesterday and played a little bit with it, and I think I did okay. But I never really knew when to bring. Do you like bring them in a blind when you don't know which kind of hate they have?
Exactly, it's the best blind sideboard plan available to Reanimator.
I shall try that again then. I still gotta figure out what I'm gonna play against Kabi in the LPL.
The other times that it's good
days
are against Leyline decks, against Delver decks. So I bring in one Lake of the Dead and one Grave Titan against Delver decks because Lake of the Dead is really good against soft counters, and if you're bringing it in, you might as well bring in one Grave Titan, even though it's actually not good against Delver.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that, and then there's the blind. And when you're in the blind, you have no idea what kind of hate they're going to bring in. It's good because it just gives you outs to, like, you know, they bring in all these different things that you couldn't have expected, and so you can just ignore those by hardcasting your stuff. And what else is it good? It's like, it always seems like it's not good, but then I just always bring it in and it ends up being good.
Maybe you should actually look into a Turbo Reanimator deck, something like that.
With Lake of the Dead?
Yeah, I don't know. You seem to try to break the cards, or try to break it. Or you have... No, actually what I want to say is, it seems like you've been trying to break the card for a long time, and I think Bob was actually doing that for a while as well, and...
I've
maybe
broken it multiple times, okay? Thank you.
Okay.
It's just people figure it gets unbroken. That's the only problem.
So, okay, it keeps going back and forth.
Yeah.
And it's getting
Lake of the
sent
Dead
back
is
to
broken.
Wizards and they unbreak it.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Cards broken.
All right, so last topic I wanted to talk about before we ended today was we had the format playoffs. So I mentioned Daryl won with Death and Taxes. Someone else made the top 4 with Maverick, and someone else did well in the top 8 with Death and Taxes. And so this is a question for Julian. Like, do you really feel like Death and Taxes and Maverick are well positioned again? And if so, like, why?
I can't really speak too much for Death and Taxes because I haven't really played that much. But I mean, it's similar to Maverick in many ways, right? And the reason I like Maverick so much is because I'm feeling really, really good against not only all the other fair decks outside of maybe the 5-color super greedy decks because I can't punish them very well, but against other Maverick decks again. Okay, that's a stupid thing to say. Maverick is good against Maverick, but against like Death and Taxes, Also against all the Delver decks, and on top of that, also against combo. Like, I talked to Cyrus, and Cyrus actually says, like, he almost fears Maverick because of the way that deck has, like, not only the hate bears, but also a very quick clock, mana denial, and now we also have the 1-drop in Deafening Silence.
Everybody who's been playing that card has been telling me it's insane, like in Maverick and Death and Taxes.
I completely underestimated how good the card was going to be. And then, like, now I'm playing 3 copies in the sideboard because it's applicable in so many matchups. Even, like, against stuff like, I think I mentioned this against Infect. Like, they can never pump their Infector because in response you're going to start to Plowshare it. It has, like, so many applications that I didn't even think about in the first place. So, yeah, that's insane. And when you're playing a list like I did, where you have, like, 2 Banishing Lights and Night of Autumn on top of the 3, what are they called? Deafening Silences we just talked about. I also feel like quite confident going into the matchup against Sneak Show. So there's not really all that much that I fear. I feel I'm very far behind against elves, of course. And since I made a conscious choice not to have that much against the graveyard, I also don't like playing against Hogak, Dredge, maybe. Like, I'm playing, or at least the GP, I played 2 Oozes because I felt like that in turn also makes up for the lack of graveyard hate in the sideboard, but it's also good against Dreadhorde Arcanist decks, and there's like the minor thing against Oko. If you put counters on your creature and they Oko it, it's still gonna be like a 5/5 or something. So there's really not all that many decks that I fear playing Maverick. It's just the 5-color decks that are a little bit scary. So yeah, I mean, Eric said that he feels confident playing Delver against Maverick, and I think, yeah, the Grixis Delver is the hardest one of them all for sure. Whereas, like, Blue-White Delver, Blue-Green, it's getting late in Germany, Blue-Red Delver, and also Bug Delver, I'm feeling quite confident with my deck because the mana denial works pretty well, and I'm also playing 2 copies of Path to Exile in the sideboard, which has been helping me out a lot against them. So yeah, I feel like it's pretty good against almost the entire field.
Yeah, so for what I was saying with Delver, against Death and Taxes, they have Aether Vial and Port and Wasteland, which makes it very easy for them to beat you in the mana game. While against Maverick, they don't have Port or Aether Vial, but they do have Night of the Reliquary, which used to be basically unbeatable for Delver, but now with Dreadhorde Arcanist and Fatal Push in the deck, and Brazen Borrower, I feel like I have enough things to actually have game against Maverick, and I've been having a pretty good win percentage against Maverick, while in the past I felt I had almost no game with most Delver decks against a Maverick deck.
Yeah, and those are the cards that make it really hard for me as well. And big part, like the way I play against Delver most of the time with Maverick, I guess most people do that, is I really just try to develop my mana and try to neutralize their biggest threat, and so they can never really like develop any card advantage, because that's not traditionally something that Delver has. And as long as they're not applying pressure, I will eventually get there on the back of like a couple of dogs that they can't really beat. Like even something like quote unquote innocent as Scavenging Ooze can become a problem for them. And at that point, you're really only scared of Plague Engineer, and that's. I'm still not 100% decided. I actually sided out Mother of Runes quite a lot because I don't want to open myself too much to Plague Engineer, but obviously it's also like a really good card against a deck that plays a bunch of spot removal. So the jury's still out, at least for me, on how I really want to sideboard and craft my plan against them. And with Death and Taxes doing pretty well, I guess Plague Engineer is not going anywhere right now. So yeah, I guess that's the current state of the metagame and Legacy right now. I think we all feel pretty good and excited about what we've experienced. Like I gotta say, I was a little bit down on it before the GP. But I mean, part of that was that I had a good GP, I guess. But overall, the gameplay was pretty good. That's usually the most important thing to me, like having good gameplay. I'm still a little bit sad that like Elves is having such a rough time right now. I hope it can recover. I know that Newton has been doing some work on that deck. So let's see what the near future is gonna bring.
I just love that in this new open meta that people feel like and are able to play pretty much anything they want. Like some pretty crazy decks made it into day 2 and did okay. Like a Delver Reanimator deck. There's a bunch of crazy deck lists if you look at the Frank Karsten publishing of the full 1600.
Yeah, there's this obscure deck. I don't know if you guys saw that. It's called the Epic Storm. I don't know what that is. Maybe they're using the Epic mechanic or something. There used to be an extended deck that used that. But apparently, like, one of them made it into day 2. So shout outs to them.
Yeah, I mean, good job. Like I said, you can play anything and make it into day 2.
Including the guy who played Dino Stumpy. Maybe that's actually the guy who managed to beat Anorak. I felt really sorry for Anorak because I think that might have been the match that put him out of contention. But
oh my god, he lost to Dino Stompy? I did not hear that. Oh my god, I need to make fun of him now. This is amazing. Thank you.
Yeah, it was like round 3. He got shifting Ceratops.
I just know he was like super worried about his like elo. I'm like, bro. And then now you're telling me he lost to Dino Stompy, so that like knocked him out of the top 10 in terms of MTG Elo Project legacy. So thank you, you just made my night.
Wow.
So yeah, let's see what Dino Stumpy is going to accomplish in the future. I know that Phil is still working on the deck, and I think he actually called it the best Stompy deck around right now, which I think that might still be Bomberman, but I could be wrong. I mean, I don't
think it can be Dino Stumpy. I don't know. I played that deck, and the threats look really good, but there's actually only like 6 good threats, and then you have a bunch of air.
I mean, tell me when you cast a Chancellor of the Tangle, and then we'll talk.
Yeah, or when you draw one. I guess you could put it on your Chromox.
Yeah. So I guess, guys, you got anything else you want to talk about, or are we gonna close it out here?
I think we should thank our patrons and wrap up.
Yeah, definitely. But before we do that, I really want to point out again how much Legacy has been going on in Europe over the last 4 weeks, pretty much. We had almost 250 people in Prague. On the same weekend, we had something like 200 in Italy already. Then we had the big tournaments leading up to the GP in Italy. We had the big GP with 1,600 players almost, which I think makes it the 5th or 6th biggest event of the year. And on top of that, we also have 220 people in Italy for the Nebraska sport. So there's a ton of Legacy going on, especially in Italy, and it makes me really, really happy. And like most of you guys know, I actually don't own a Legacy deck right now. I had Tim Langer from Germany who let me borrow the Maverick deck, so shoutouts to him. And I'm feeling so good about the deck right now, and the only cards I actually own are 2 Savannas right now, so I'm actually thinking about maybe I should buy the rest of the deck again just to have it and feel good about it. So yeah, I feel Legacy is in a pretty good spot right now. There are issues that we talked about, and they might develop into bigger things. But for now, I'm happy jumping into a league and just playing Magic. So that's how I'm feeling about that. And with that, I want to say big shout outs to not only our new Patreons, but everybody who said hello at the GP. I already talked about that, but that was really something else. I've never experienced anything like that. I guess, Eric, you also had a lot of people come say hello, talk to you about everything we're doing here. That felt so great. And yeah, if you want to support the podcast, you can head to patreon.com/everydayeternal. And yeah, you can subscribe on different tiers. You can come into our Patreon, into our Discord. You can get stickers that I'm sending out like every couple of months, so you can get those. And just like, for example, Valerio, Michael Raymond, and Karen Kiang, who are decided to support us on Patreon. And of course, our regular supporters, Matt, James, Bashu, Scott, Kurosh, and Jeremy. Man, there's just so many people who are supporting the podcast. I'm so happy for that. And you guys really help us with the production and everything on this. So thank you so much for that. Thank you so much for saying hello. And with that, I think we're going to call it a day. I'm going to jump into another league with Maverick right now. I actually don't want to go to bed. I got to get my script ranger fix. I don't know. What are you guys up to now? It's probably a little bit earlier for you.
I'm playing Standard.
Sorry, you go ahead.
I'm playing Standard.
Oh, why are you playing Standard?
Because Grand Prix Portland's next week, and so I'm trying to become...
What are you playing?
I've been playing the Fires deck, and it feels pretty good. I also played the Simic Flash deck. That one, I felt like I needed more format knowledge to maneuver with counter magic correctly, so I'm not going to play that. And now I'm going to try Menguchi's Simic Ramp deck and see how that one feels, and then decide between Fires and Simic Ramp.
Cool. Yeah, GPs are fun. I'm going to start testing for the year-end Legacy Championship. That's going to be, it's actually early January. So I'm super excited about that. It's a high-level 40-person event. Now we know who all the qualified people are. And so I'm excited to kind of get going and see how I can stack up against the best Legacy players on Magic Online.
Yeah, that's going to be a crazy event, right? It might actually be one of the highest or like most competitive, most difficult legacy events ever created. So
yeah, and so I did the math. Minimum prize isn't that high. Minimum prize is like $80. The average price is like maybe $250. But if you get average price, not including the value of the invites, but the value of the invites to the mocks is literally over $10,000. So if you get first place, you make like an insane amount of money. But if you get second place, you make like less than $1,000. So it's a little bit imbalanced, but I'm excited to, fight for it.
Good luck.
I wonder which kind of splits are there going to be.
That seems hard to split.
Yeah, I know that in the past, like when there was like a Hall of Famer in the finals of a Magic Online PTQ, they would be like, oh, you know what, like give me that, and then I might happen to concede. And I mean, yeah, let's not get too deep into that because apparently that's like not something that's supposed to happen unless I don't want to talk about it.
You brought it up
too much. Anyway, guys, thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. Make sure to catch the LPL this week on Wednesday, when there's going to be Javier Dominguez against me, as well as the loser of our match, who will play Autumn Pochette for the second slot in the grand finals, which will be played on the next week. So not on the 18th, but on the 17th, because our final is going to be on a Tuesday and not on a Wednesday. So this week it's going to be Wednesday. Next week it's going to be Tuesday. So check that out. Check out our Patreon, and also hit us up on Tube. Oh god, guys, I'm getting really stupid the later it gets. On Twitter. So you can find me at itsjulian23, and on Twitch you can find me on twitch.tv/itsjulian. Guys, where can people find you?
I'm on Twitch at EWLandon and Twitter at EWLandon1.
I'm on Twitter at Grizzlepuff.
Awesome. So thanks a lot, and see you again next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Hula. Bye-bye. Ta-ta.